I just lived on the beach, so I was like, it's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But I got kicked out because my next door neighbor was my landlord, and I have Tourette's, and she doesn't understand Tourette's because she was like 80 something. So I had to go, and now I don't live next to the beach, so it's slightly less worth it.
Did you did you end up having like an altercation kind of where, or did you just like say something and she got like really upset? Or honestly, and like this is why I have a level of respect for people that are just like that are very forthcoming with their beliefs. This is true of like bad political beliefs or social beliefs, or things like veganism or whatever. If somebody is just gonna outright be like, listen, I don't give a fuck about animals, period. Like if dogs are dying on the street or whatever, I just don't care. I respect that person more than people that get like selectively outraged against the cute ones that they happen to come across in the news while turning a blind eye to everything else. Because it shows me that like they don't actually give a fuck about anything. It's just whatever's like the most convenient thing for them at the time, and that usually drives me more crazy than anything else. Hi, what's up?
Hello. How you doing?
Pretty good. What do you stay awake so late doing? Or no, you don't
Uh,
have to reveal if there's like some secret occult shit going on or something, of course.
well, it's common for people with ADHD to not sleep often or to be very nocturnal. And I
Mm-hmm.
also am a very busy person. I look after my mom. I look after animals.
Mm-hmm.
I run all the usual stuff. I have a very close relationship with my YouTube editor, so I'm a bit more hands-on with my content. So I just keep busy, is all.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
What time?
do you find that you lack sleep, or do you just sleep later in the day?
Sometimes I lack sleep. Like sometimes I'll stream and then I'll do loads of shit and then I'll go, oh shit, I've got to stream again, and I'll not realize that I haven't slept in a few days. So sometimes it's like not sleeping, and other times I do sleep. I just sleep during the day.
All right. Well, be careful. Take care of your brain.
I do try. Weirdly, I function just fine on no sleep. Most people don't notice, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing okay so far.
Sure.
I mean, I'm 30 and I still manage to, play computer games and things, and
Yeah. Hang out with the kids on Twitch and everything. Yeah. Staying hip.
Indeed, indeed. What time is it for you?
It's only 11, or getting to be 11 o'clock.
Oh, it's nice and early for you then.
Mm-hmm.
That's like my morning.
Yeah. Jeez. Yeah. I remember when I used to be on those degenerate gamer sleep hours, but I've tried to be relatively normal. I used to have a really bad habit too of falling into the oh god, like if I fuck up, like it used to be like if I would just fuck up even one time with my sleep, I would just be fucked for days and days and days, or weeks. I would be like waking up at 6 p.m. and going to sleep at like 9 a.m. and just, yeah.
What a cut. Yeah, what I want to know is why, if I get a normal sleeping pattern for like a day, I feel
Mm-hmm.
really proud of myself, and it takes months to work up to getting my sleeping pattern straight. It'll only take one night of
Yep.
gaming to fuck it up for like months. How does that work?
So I don't know if this is a thing or not. I I wikied this once, so I don't know if it's real or not. There's something called delayed phase syndrome, and to avoid self-diagnosing, it seems like pretty fucking spot on. So basically, the idea, I guess, is that there are some people that just, I guess, some people feel more energy when it's morning outside. That's like a normal human thing. Like you have a circadian rhythm. When there's sunlight out, you feel like, oh, I've got energy. I'm ready to do shit. And then some people feel the opposite. Some people just feel the same at night. So like for me, like I would have the thing where I would get my sleep schedule in order, and it would take a monumental amount of effort, and I would finally get it. And then one night I would stay up to like 11 or 12, and then it'd be so easy to just stay up until like 8 a.m. and then I would just be completely fucked for weeks. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I heard about that. They theorized that the evolutionary reason why some of us are genetically like this is that if you have some of the tribe that's awake and on guard during the day and others during the night, then there's never a time of day where we're particularly vulnerable to predation. And that might be the reason why some of us are more nocturnal than others, because it seems to correlate with our genes to a certain degree.
Yeah, maybe it's possible.
So who knows? Maybe we were just useful at one point, but now it's very, very difficult. I live in a tiny little seaside town, and nothing's open, so I don't get to have takeout on this sleep schedule, unfortunately.
Oh my God. One thing that I'm so grateful about, for all of our problems, America has so many 24/7 places, and I feel like as I've been around Europe, that doesn't seem to be quite as common. Like I'm from the city that I'm originally from is not like the largest city in the United States, but like no matter what time of day it was, there's like a ton of restaurants that are open. Like I have so much choice. Yeah, I don't think I can handle living in a place where after like 9 o'clock everything is closed and you're just fucked. That would drive me crazy.
Yeah, well, I've slowly grown to adjust to it. I mean, I used to be able to walk out of my front door and straight into the water because I just lived on the beach. So I was like, it's worth it.
Hmm.
Um, but I got kicked out because my next door neighbor was my landlord, and I have Tourette's, and she doesn't understand Tourette's because she was like 80 something. So I had to go, and now I don't live next to the beach, so it's slightly less worth it.
Did you did you end up having like an altercation kind of where, or did you just like say something and she got like really upset, or?
Wow. So basically, I'm pretty sure she could just hear me through the wall,
Mm-hmm.
which was a problem. But on top of that, and having, the added confusion of like someone shouting about fisting through the walls when you're like a very Christian, very stiff upper lip British old lady,
Mm-hmm.
I think another aspect of it was I had a flatmate at the time, and she just assumed that he was my husband for some reason or another.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came for time for him to move out, because he could afford a place on his own, she was like, "Well, I just don't know how a single young lady is going to manage the house alone. So in interest of keeping the property shipshape, I think it might be time for you to move along." I think it was like bullshit excuse, if I'm honest, because she was always weird champing me.
Damn.
Yeah,
You
so
don't have
there was
any
that.
protections like that in the UK or whatever for? I know that
Well,
like in the United States you can't kick somebody out for like familial status or whatever, but I don't know if it's the same in other countries, but.
I think if you don't state it to the housing association, there's no real way to prove
Mm-hmm.
the reason. So if she says, "Oh yes, I just want to, move some family into the place or whatever," then there's no real way to prove that it was
Sure.
any kind of discrimination, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, damn. Do you like where you're at better now, or was the move kind of shitty, or what?
Certainly bigger. I There were only like 3 places to move to available in my town, and I have to
Mm-hmm.
stay close to my mom because I care for her.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up in a 4-bed place by myself.
Oh, jeez.
So, but I've just filled it with animals. So,
Okay.
I mean, someone in your chat, I laughed as well because they were saying that I'm very brave for so closely associating with you, apparently.
I just, I just have a lot of anti-fans on the internet, I guess.
Do you get that often? Like, I don't know if this question is off limits, so you can let me know in chat if there's anything that we should
Yeah,
change
I'm
the
an open
subject or
book. Don't
whatever.
worry.
Okay, that's cool. Um, so I was just wondering, like, how do you when your whole content is quite often notorious for being controversial and about politics and dick, what do you do when, like, how does that work with collaborations and stuff? Because I'm sure that must be incredibly inhibiting if people disagree with you. The thing with putting opinions online is it's the most risky kind of content. You can halve your relatability to your community in a sentence with opinions and with politics and stuff. And that can make it such a barrier for collaborations and everything. It seems like the hardest kind of genre to be notorious for on the internet. And how do you establish friendships beyond that and not let it intervene, like interfere?
Yeah, I mean, you don't, basically. I guess like my desire would be that people could recognize that, like people seem to think sometimes that I only have one mode. Um, that like if I'm involved in anything, it's going to be like a screaming, shouting match. But I would say that like the majority of the stuff that I do is not that. I'm not normally like engaged in like screaming matches with people. Even when it comes to like the political debate stuff, usually like most of my conversations are pretty cordial and pretty chill, pretty tame. Um, but yeah, I mean, when you have that reputation, I guess everybody's like a little bit afraid that things will turn into shouting matches, or so yeah. But so yeah, I guess I don't really do much collaboration. Most of the people that I collaborate with actually come from within my community, which I guess in the long run has kind of turned out to be okay. Because then like I've been involved in a lot of pretty dramatic altercations with people, but it hasn't really affected me in terms of like my growth or my streams at all, because I don't usually collaborate with those people anyway. So yeah. Also, most streamers are worthless human beings, so fuck them regardless. But, um, yeah, I'm half joking there, but yeah, I don't know. It's cool. Some people don't mind. Like, I'm on Trainwrex's podcast sometimes, which is cool. Austin will bring me on as like a fucking merc, I guess, to fight with people on his show sometimes. But otherwise, yeah, I just kind of keep to myself, basically.
Yeah, I worry about just being a general inconvenience. I can't always prevent myself from interrupting people, and I know that a lot of people probably think because I'm not neurotypical that I'm I don't know how to put it politely, but just generally not smart and not very capable. I've even had people who are very nice to me and befriended me from like YouTube and YouTubers and Twitch streamers who are like, so what are you gonna do if you get a boyfriend and stuff? Because your whole audience is just perverts who laugh at your Tourette's, right? And I'm like, what? So I don't really see myself as a very valuable person to collaborate with, and so I just assume nobody wants to come on my stream.
I feel like most of the, to be fair, I don't have time to watch streams, so I'm only going by what I see on clips. I feel like most of the clips I see, usually people appreciate your collaboration with other content creators. Like usually there's like funny moments that come out of it. A lot of it sometimes revolving around the Tourette's, of course, but like it seems like most people appreciate it.
Mm. Well, I guess it's very easy to only see one side or the other. So I often end up seeing a lot of people who are making fun of me or telling the streamer not to associate themselves with me, and
For sure.
all that sort of thing. And yeah, a lot of people don't know how to handle me because they don't know how mentally disabled I am. They don't know how far my condition reaches, and they don't know what's polite and what's not, and it's just awkward and scary. I see my streams get clipped and played on larger streamers streams, and I watch them really awkwardly sit there and make a really straight face because they're worried if they laugh at me
Oh, they don't want to
that they'll
offend you.
be
Or...
yeah, they don't want to seem like the kind of streamer that laughs at disabilities. So people send in the clips and they just sit there with a straight face and awkwardly move on and don't say a thing. And I just kind of feel like it's not. I'm not like playing the victim or anything. It's just you have to be very tactical when you have a very visible disability. It's not easy.
Yeah, I understand for sure. This sounds really dumb or really weird, but have you ever considered creating a guide to dealing with you? So like, say you're gonna collab with a streamer and you've got like a little fucking 2-page PDF and it's like, hey, like, my name is Anita. It's okay if you laugh at this. It's okay you bring this up. You're not gonna hurt my feelings. I don't like to joke about this. I do like to joke about this. Like, otherwise I'm like a normal human being. Like, you don't have to treat me like an alien or something. Have you ever? I don't know if that would seem even more alienating or.
What I often let people do is fumble and ask at the beginning because it shows lots of very socially awkward people in chat who don't know how to relate to anybody, let alone someone with Tourette's, how to politely ask and what kind of answers they can generally expect and what the best way to navigate it is. And it also gives people a window into my daily experience because obviously people who drive me in a taxi, I can't drive because of my condition and things like that. They ask the same questions and stuff, and some of them handle it terribly and some of them handle it really well. So no matter how that discussion goes, it shows people something. It shows the people with Tourette's, like, this is how you handle these questions. And it shows people who don't have it, like, it's fine to ask these questions. This is how they'll respond. This is how to handle this situation. So I just, maybe this is a terrible thing to do, but I just let streamers fumble.
Sure.
And ask.
Here's something I'm curious about. When you have like tics, do you prefer that people not acknowledge them at all? Do you think it's funny when people respond to them and laugh at them? Like in your perfect world, like how would people respond? Yeah.
So, for me, I didn't get a diagnosis till really late. I was like 26, 27. This meant that everyone just weird champed me and nobody really understood what was going on with me, and they were awkward and quite often angry. I used to get punished a lot as a kid, and when people laugh it off or joke or acknowledge it, I know how they're feeling. I know that they're not uncomfortable, they're not mad at me, and it's reassuring. When people keep a straight face out of respect, I sometimes wonder if it's because they're mad at me or offended or don't understand what's happening. I don't know what's going on in their head. So I find it less concerning when people respond in some way or another. I don't want people to force it every single time just to constantly reassure me either. So I just let people react however they want. So long as they're not mad at me, I'm happy.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. Damn.
But I didn't
get
like,
this diagnosis until you were 26. That's really crazy.
I went into the doctor first time alone when I was 13. And I was like, you see my arm just moved then? I didn't ask my hand to do that. Why is it doing that? And they're like, well, do you hear things that aren't there? I was like, no. Do you think you have magical powers? I was like, no. And they're like, well, you're probably just attention seeking and you'll probably grow out of it. So I was like, oh. And I was really upset with that answer because I couldn't control it. I was doing it when I was alone, but I now knew that if anyone saw me do it, they'd think I was attention seeking, which made me terrified of being near people and them seeing the tick. So I hid, and it made me really struggle at school because I was getting in trouble with people as well as teachers and had no way to tell them what was going on and that I didn't mean it.
Mm-hmm.
So it meant that I used to enrage other students quite often by saying offensive things. Obviously, you just can't offer another 13-year-old boy a fisting and expect things to go well.
Mm-hmm.
So it all ended with me being beaten unconscious and waking up in the kind of medic area of the school thinking to myself, you know what? I'm not gonna, it's not gonna be worth getting an education if I'm not gonna survive to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back into home education and I was agoraphobic and just scared of how people would react to me. And I just kept pushing. I kept going to the doctor and getting the same answer, probably attention seeking, till I was 21-ish. And I went to the hospital and I was like, God damn it! I have this thing. It's not about other people. It's not attention seeking. Please just test. Like, there must be something. There must be some answers. They tested me
Mm-hmm.
and they figured it out. They put it on my medical records and just didn't send me a letter or tell me for another 5 years. So I checked in like when I was 26, like, yo, is there any progress on that? Should I get more tests? Do we know yet? And they're like, oh yeah, you've had Tourette's. You have Tourette's. We've known for ages. I was like, cool. Could have told me that.
Yeah.
And that was my life, and that's how I found out, and that's when my life started. It's when I started getting a job, it's when I started having friends, it's when I started developing my social skills, which I've only developed in the last, like, 3 or 4 years. So, yeah, it basically was a life starter for me.
Gotcha. Damn. Your the physical tics are so bad that you don't think you could ever drive safely?
I actually gave it a try and I made a video about it on YouTube. There are plenty of people with Tourette syndrome who can drive, but the problem is a lot of people don't know how it feels or understand it. The best way I can describe it is it's like if I have an urge, if I don't indulge the urge, I'm in intense physical pain. It's like someone stood over you with a hammer and they're smashing your hand every time you don't do as they say. And so sometimes my brain has the urge so fast and my response is so fast that I end up acting on it before I even realize that I have the urge at all. And so sometimes I know a tic is coming and other times I don't. And I've already indulged it before I even realize I have the urge. And this means that if I have any anxiety, if I have any extreme joy, any kind of extreme emotion can trigger it as well, one of the triggers. So if I'm in a car full of people, I worry about hurting them or crashing, immediately slam the brakes or slam the accelerator. And so I had a driving instructor with his hand on the brake the whole time, and he basically had to save everyone in the car quite a few times. Because as soon as I had an intrusive thought about crashing the car, I would end up doing something that could potentially crash the car.
Gotcha. Well, damn.
But there are some people with Tourette syndrome who can, ride motorcycles and operate, heavy machinery and drive and all sorts. It depends on the severity. I mean, I don't know if you know many people who aren't neurotypical in any way. I mean, you know a lot of streamers. You must know a lot of people with ADHD at least.
Yeah, probably. But I would say that, like, we're on a spectrum of, like, neuroatypical, and you're definitely farther along that than most, even people with ADHD, right?
Yeah, I mean, most people with Tourette syndrome have ADHD, really severely. It's really hard to tell the difference between the symptoms as well.
Sure.
And OCD as well, because they're all caused by an underdevelopment of a specific region of the brain, and it's a similar region of the brain.
For executive function or something, for...
Yep. Do you know much about the brain? Do you know much about the regions and what they control and things like that?
Like very basic stuff. I know like amygdala is emotional shit. I know hippocampus is for memory. Prefrontal cortex is for advanced shit. But I don't know, like, I'm not like a neuroscientist or anything. My son has ADHD really bad, so I did a lot of reading on that. So I know a bit about like executive function control and whatever and whatnot. And then my mom has Alzheimer's disease, so I know a bit about like the hippocampus and stuff related to that. And memory, but yeah, I just learn stuff as I guess I need it. I'll just bring up the Wikipedia and start reading shit if I if I need to know something. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's the best way to learn. I retain stuff so much better if it's in relation to what I'm presently experiencing or knowledge I need to apply immediately than if I just read stuff to find things out of curiosity.
Yeah.
I read
Yeah.
an interesting thing about the hippocampus. It's apparently the area of the brain where the most zinc is stored and utilized, and that it has a very huge function in relation to empathy, apparently, if I remember correctly. I might have it might not be the hippocampus, it might be another part, but I can swear it's the hippocampus. What made me really interested in that is that specifically men release a lot of zinc when they wank, and I wondered if it had an impact on their capacity to empathy, to deplete their zinc if it's used specifically, mostly in that region of the brain and in relation to, empathy and empathetic response. So I wondered if there was any studies conducted on it, and there isn't any. This is why I wish I had gone into science, because I want to know this sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd probably depend on the amounts needed for everything. In terms of
Mm-hmm.
releasing stuff when you have a wank, it's probably used to create like suitable environments for sperm to live in. I don't know if that's like if that needs way more than like small amounts of zinc stored in the brain, or maybe the brain uses more. I'm not entirely sure.
The brain uses more. I tried to find out the amount of zinc lost from a Kuma, and it's negligible if you're only coming once a day. But we know Twitch chat. We know they're probably doing that a lot more than once a day.
Sure.
And also, I wondered if this had any relation to, as we normalize, I don't think masturbation or watching porn is particularly wrong. I think people can have a fine relationship with it and take it or leave it. But I know that a vast majority, statistically, of all pornographic material ever made includes violence towards women, which is really interesting. So I wondered if there's a relationship between that increased appetite and the increased desensitization to that kind of context and zinc loss from, over Cooming. But it's something I would love to do research on, but never really got the opportunity. I'm just curious.
Yeah, who knows? It's possible. Desensitization sounds like it could be a thing even regardless of the zinc thing, because I know that, for instance, as upset as people get, playing violent video games does lead to desensitization of violence. It doesn't seem to lead to an increase in violent behavior, but it does lead to a desensitization of violence, so... Yeah, it seems something that's really unfortunate that I kind of discovered in life is there's a lot of stuff that I enjoy that's kind of taboo. So whether it's humor or porn or whatever, but it seems like it's really hard to responsibly promote that because I don't know how many people are capable of responsibly enjoying stuff like that sometimes, which is pretty frustrating. Yeah. So like it might be the case that like I think that porn is awesome. Obviously, I think there's even cool things you can learn from porn. Obviously, you have to know like what is like realistic and what is just filmed for effect. But it seems like I don't know if most people can do that. It might be the truth that porn has like a net negative impact on society because it negatively influences people's views of sex or sexuality or the opposite gender or sex. Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but I spent years helping people who were addicted to porn. So people who are doing nofap. So
could any of them fly yet? I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. Some of the no-fappers are crazy. Oh, okay. Faps? Holy shit. Okay. So,
Yeah, because it's an area which has very little research in relation to it because it's a relatively modern problem.
On whether or not non-fappers can fly? I'm sorry. I'm just okay, no, go ahead. I know what you're saying. Go ahead. Yeah, abstaining from masturbation. I understand. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there isn't much research into reliably how it affects the brain because there isn't a large enough sample size of men who don't watch it to measure them up against. And so learning how porn affects the brain is hard from the get-go, but then learning how to reset your addiction to it and how you change the way that your brain is structured after porn addiction is not a very well researched thing either. But yeah, like I've learnt that a lot of it can reduce homophobia. Exposure to porn can reduce homophobia. People who've watched porn are less likely to have homophobic response to questions regarding it. But it can also desensitize people towards, regarding violence towards women. It has an impact on the way that we perceive things. And it can normalize things to a degree where, I'd say it probably is impacting society. I experience that on a personal level, but I think I'd rather rely on mass data. And there's a lot of stuff saying that a lot more young boys are pressuring young girls to do sexual things very early and are modeling it off porn, which isn't very representative of what actually is pleasurable to experience. And so a lot of young boys are expecting and pressuring young girls to do very extreme sex acts from a very young age, especially underage, as that's now heavily fetishized, and that one of the biggest impacts it's having on women's sex life, even though up to about 43% of women tend to watch porn as opposed to most men, is it's still affecting their lives because they're having very unsatisfying and aggressive first experiences of sex. Like that's becoming an increasing thing, is that guys are pressuring them to do things that they don't want to do and don't like, and their first experiences they're not coming, and they don't know that that's not normal. They think that if they don't compete with porn in terms of sex acts and the way that they look, that they've somehow failed. And now, girls, really, really young girls, young teens, are very commonly saving up for labiaplasties because they find that they're incredibly ashamed of their genitalia. Fewer and fewer women are going for pap tests and smear tests for cervical cancer, which you're meant to do fairly regularly because they're ashamed to show anyone their vulvas and stuff, because porn has distorted their expectations of themselves and how they should look. And so it definitely is having a highly reported impact on women, which is odd because they are the group less likely to watch
Kai
it.
Brown, $4.99. Holy crap, I did not expect
So yeah,
you to
I
be
feel like it
steaming
does
this
have an
late.
impact, but I don't think that makes porn necessarily wrong. It's like sugar isn't inherently bad, but some people harvest it in some pretty unethical fucking ways. I think it's not usually a substance or an item or an object or a context that's wrong in and of itself. It's usually how we use it in our relationship. I don't think that drugs are inherently bad, but our relationship with them can be, for example. And with your response to like being interested in taboo porn, I think that that's incredibly normal. There is a strong correlation between what we find most arousing and what's most socially unacceptable. If you look at the top 10 searches for porn in any country, they tend to have a direct correlation between that and what's most societally taboo. And that's why you'll find that some are more interested in scat porn and others incest and others, underage and others overage, like huge age differences. I think all of these things are in direct correlation with what we find most taboo. And so often I see a lot of hope in seeing depraved things in Pornhub searches because it's an indication of what people don't want to see in society. Often what we want to see in the bedroom is not what we want from society and not what we want in any real context. There's a strong relationship between disgust and arousal.
Sure.
So yeah, I find it quite promising. It's a direct relationship. It's a direct kind of way. Everyone's dicks are basically telling us where we want society to go and what we want society to get over.
Yeah, I guess we'll
Almost like a moral compass.
I guess we'll see. Yeah.
Sorry, that was a hell of a rant.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, something that's very hard for people to do that I notice when you have conversations about anything is it seems very hard for some people to recognize that things can be simultaneously like beneficial and not beneficial, detrimental. It feels like sometimes people need things to be all or nothing. So with like the conversation around pornography, some people will get like incredibly upset if you bring up the idea at all that it might be detrimental in some ways. Like people will lose their fucking minds over it, which means that you can't. Like nobody's saying that it should go away completely, but it seems hard to have a conversation about it at all because people take up like really extreme positions on both sides. Like you've got groups of people that like truly do believe that all porn should be banned from society and that it's like destroying men, and then you've got people that like refuse to acknowledge that like anything can be bad for you. They just take like really extreme points of view on the other end of it too. Yeah. I hear a lot of people, there seems to be like a lot of hot talk around like the whole like dopamine stuff, that certain things that we do in society are like hitting these receptors way too much and it's like poisoning our ability to get like normal enjoyment out of society. So I know that dopamine is brought up a lot when it comes to porn consumption. I know that it's brought up a lot when it comes to like the consumption of like certain social media things, so like Reddit. Yeah.
What's your take on
Um,
that?
Something that I am very disappointed in general is it seems like we have made like really big, huge strides in certain sciences. So like things like physics, but it seems like in other sciences like biology, it feels like we still know very, very, very little, just because of all the restrictions on a lot of the research related to that over the years. So neurochemistry is still something that is like such a fucking mystery, and it's a little frustrating that it's still such a mystery. Like even insofar as like what does dopamine do in the body? What does serotonin do in the body? Like we kind of have vague understandings of how some of it works, but like the underpinnings are not well understood at all. And like even the way that we test like medical drugs is basically that like well, we're just gonna give this to a bunch of people and we're gonna watch them over time and see what happens, and that's really all we can do. And I think that's kind of sad. I hope that we learn more about the human brain as time goes on. That would be cool.
I don't know if any of these. What are these restrictions? I didn't know that there were restrictions on what we can research in terms of neurochemistry.
Yeah, so a lot of the research that we have for like SSRIs comes from like the fucking 60s and 70s and shit, because we've like banned the research of like ketamine or psilocybin or LSD or whatever. Like all of these drugs have been just off limits to researchers because of how the United States schedules dangerous drugs. So like a lot of the so like it's taken so long to get like any of this research legalized, which is like incredibly sad. Because it's possible that maybe some of these substances can be utilized in therapy or can be synthesized or used in other drugs that could help people in whatever ways. Yeah, basically it is very cucked, yeah.
I didn't know that. I wonder if we have the same restrictions here in the UK.
I would imagine so, yeah. Europe as a whole is pretty shitty when it comes to drugs as well. I know that America gets a lot of flack for shit, but I think in a lot of Europe it's pretty hard to find anything too, depending on what you're talking about, but yeah.
I know that you're quite open about your, or at least, am I mistaken? I'm very tired. Have you like openly talked about drug use personally? Like,
yeah, I'm super open about literally everything in my life. So yeah.
Cool. So, like, how have you found being open about that on? Not just on Twitch, but also when you have a highly political community. Like, is that a difficult thing to do? Does that come with backlash?
Surprisingly, I'm not sure if the drug stuff has. There's like so many other things that people can attack me for. If somebody's going to like personally insult me, usually it's going to be something related to like sexuality, or it's going to be something related to like my personal life, or it'll be something related to like a political position. It's not normally related to drug stuff. Not that I can think of that's happened, so yeah.
I find it really, really hard to care about people's personal lives because I kind of feel like we all fumble and nobody's given a straight up guide on how to navigate every situation perfectly or become a perfect person. And so most of us fuck up, make mistakes, do dumb shit, hurt people, and either learn better or end up really traumatized and condemned to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. I think Freud called that initially repetition compulsion. But anyway, the thing with all of that is that I just find it so hard and exhausting to need everyone who ever teaches me anything, anyone who ever makes me think, anyone who ever does their job, anyone who serves me coffee, anyone who makes my content, anyone who cleans a fucking toilet, to have an absolutely perfectly respectable, squeaky clean life history, sex life, diet, all the rest of it, in order to provide that and be a presence in my life. I kind of feel like it's a weird expectation that we put on streamers specifically that we don't put on, say, the person who sticks shelves at the supermarket or anything, where everyone watches them and their life and makes judgments and needs them to like date the right people, say the right things at all fucking times, never say anything dumb on Twitter. Like, who else lives under that much scrutiny? And since when does that become a requirement of people being funny or making good content?
Yeah, I think that streaming is pretty unique in that you have like an unprecedented amount of access to a person's life. Like nothing like this has ever existed in all of history. And so like, I don't think we're used to having this level of access to a person. I think that humans are very quick to make judgments about other humans. When you find like some bad pieces of information, we're very binary in terms of how we view people. So you're either bad or good. It's very hard to have a nuanced view of somebody. And then all people make mistakes. Like we know this, right? But if you're a streamer, your mistakes are broadcast to the world. A lot of people have done a lot of shitty things. Every shitty thing I've ever done is publicly available on the internet. So like, and this happens, it's funny because every time I get into a dramatic event, people have like this like little like anti-Destiny toolkit where they can break out like every single fucking argument that has ever been used against me for like mistakes that I've done in the past. And it's like, okay, well, and you don't really have the ability to do that or have that level of access to most people's personal lives. So it's definitely like an extra stressor when it comes to streaming for sure.
Yeah, I do. Like, you say most streamers are a piece of shit, but I wonder if they're just, a lot of us are very What's the best way to put this? A lot of us are just different because we have to be different than the norm. No normal brain would ever be able to cope with this level of scrutiny and invasion of privacy and pressure. It definitely has an
Absolutely.
impact on me.
Yeah, there's
Like,
definitely like a selection bias that occurs. Like only certain types of people are going to make it in streaming. And I think you have to have like there's something somewhat wrong with you, I think, to be able to make it in this industry. Like it's very everything we do is very inhuman. This level of scrutiny, this level of there are so many like little quirks about being a human that just make this such a horrible fucking job. Like one example of this, for instance, is that like if you read through a ton of feedback, you can read through so much positive feedback, and one negative comment will stand out more than 100 positive ones. Like that's like a
yeah,
feature of every single living human being, and
yeah.
it makes us very incompatible with the really hostile environments that we end up like working in. So yeah, this is definitely like a rough thing for most like normal people. Like people pretend that they could like do this, but I don't think most people could handle the level of scrutiny that the average streamer person is involved in. Not by a long shot.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I've got 2 points there. One of them is that I've stopped being able to have relationships and close friendships because I stream. Like, I feel like I use the money I earn from streaming to make sure that my mom gets care, to make sure that my animals get to live. And I feel like if I lose that, then I lose my capability to take care of them. So it almost feels to me like their well being is held hostage for my success.
Mm-hmm.
And that really makes me feel like, yeah, I could have a partner, but like if things fuck up and they try to cancel me or they like, I don't know, take pictures of me in the shower or whatever and post them on the internet, like that fucks with my life, my reputation, and my stream. I reckon I can handle being lonely for a few more years if it means that my mom gets to live, you know? And so, like, I've started to end up rationalizing, distancing myself from everyone and being super careful. Everything I ever write, I'm like, am I okay with millions of people seeing this as a screenshot before I click send? And
Mm-hmm.
it's really had, like, this really heavy pressure on me to not to kind of be incredibly cautious of people. And I don't know how. Like I've spoken to some streamers. Most of the streamers I know who've been doing it for like 10 years or something are all men. Because I feel like this level of scrutiny is so much higher if you are a woman. Because already we shame women for ever having sex, ever having a partner, ever making mistakes. If they age, it's considered a failing. And you know, you see that with people like the actress from Star Wars. I can't remember her name, Princess Leia, and
Yeah.
like the way she's treated just for the crime of getting older and not being quite as nuttable anymore, you know, all this ridiculous shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just feel like I just have no idea how people handle it long term and stay normal, and it looks like people don't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely possible. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. How long have you been involved in streaming now?
2 years. I didn't know what streaming was before that, so I jumped in before I really knew what I was letting myself in for.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Do you
How about you?
I've been here for a long time. I think like 11 years now.
That's insane.
Yeah. How much longer do you think you want to do streaming?
I don't know. I am not very good at planning. That's the executive function part of my
Mm-hmm.
brain. So I have just been running with whatever opportunities land on my feet. That's how I ended up streaming. That's why I'm still here. I thought everyone made me go viral because of my tics, and I thought, you know, me shouting cock's gonna get old pretty fast. No one's gonna be here in a week. I
Mm-hmm.
saw lots of other people who went viral, just everyone gets bored of them and leaves after a short period. When I went to all of the VIP parties and stuff, everyone came up to me and they're like, save your money. You're going to get a wave of money going viral, but then everyone's going to leave and you'll go back to where you were before. Exactly. So don't get into debt and remember to save money for taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still here. And the numbers have pretty much stayed stable. And I'm like, how? Why are people still here? And I keep thinking that everything is going to fall apart tomorrow.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it happens to a lot of people, but from what I've seen, it seems like your audience is relatively stable. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I have much content, if I'm honest, but people still keep coming, and I'm still kind of figuring out I know that streamers are meant to have a formula. It's kind of weird that I've been doing this for 2 years and I don't know what mine is.
What do you? How do you go about like figuring out what you want to do on stream? Do you like ever plan this out in advance? You just turn it on and hope that like content comes to you, or?
So some days I just talk to my chat. I look at what they want to ask because for some reason people think that I've got good advice. And I thought as soon as these people see the inside of my house, they're gonna stop asking me for my contribution. But they saw like my bedroom and said it looked like a crack den, and they still ask me what to do with their lives. So I think we're good. So that's pretty stable content. I'll come on and I'll be like, yo, what do you want to talk about? Anyone need any help with anything? And people will ask me about relationships and all sorts of stuff like that. But sometimes I plan vaguely, and I bring people on, or I choose a game, or I change something. But it's rare because I really struggle with planning. So most of the time, I'll occasionally play a game or just talk to chat. That's most of my content, with the odd exception.
Gotcha. Did you ever manage to hop onto that Rust server and do any of that, or no?
I thought about it. I mean, I feel like the drama made me a little bit nervous and tentative too. I was like, if someone invites me, then yeah, sure. But I'm not gonna try myself actively to get on. So I never did in the end. Someone did end up inviting me, but that particular person got banned straight after, so I never ended up playing with them. And then that was all it was. I kind of feel like I'm not a drama content creator. I think the minute you start fighting with someone, all of your tweets and all of your response videos and stuff become your content. And I kind of want people to feel, I want my content to leave people wanting to do better and having more reasons to connect with each other, being more accepting. Those are the sorts of things I like to come of my stream. I don't think me complaining about someone else's behavior is going to result in any of that. So I don't want to get bogged down in it and end up having to justify every little action, releasing like Google documents on every word I said and what I meant by it and shit. Just seems like not something I really want to bother with. So I'm sure there's money in it, but I'm not here for the money.
Sure.
Not entirely.
Well, okay. Have you ever lived anywhere besides the UK before, or have you always been?
Dude, most of my life I couldn't afford food, so I flew in a plane for the first time when I was 28 to go to my first TwitchCon to Germany. So I've only been to Germany and the US a couple of times, and only for a few days. I don't know what anywhere is like. I know nothing of the world. I was home educated, never did geography. I found out where India was on GeoGuessr like a year ago. So all I know is the UK.
Gotcha. All right.
What about you? Where have you lived?
I don't know. I've lived in a few random spots in the US. I lived in Poland, I guess, for 3 months. Yeah, and then I've just like traveled around to a bunch of different areas. But I don't think I've lived in too many different areas.
Was Poland for Melina? I don't remember where she lives. I'm sorry.
No, Melina lives in, or is from Stockholm, Sweden.
Okay.
So yeah, so I've been up there a couple times for a month or two. Yeah, I've been to South Korea for a month, I guess. Poland was fun. The biggest difference I noticed when the number one thing I noticed when being in any European country is the public transport is really good. So that's always fun, I guess, because I lived in Poland for 3 months, but I didn't need a car to go anywhere at any time of the day, which is really nice. But other than that, like other than getting food, I basically spend all my time indoors anyway, like playing video games or talking on stream. So it doesn't really matter much where I live, I guess, as long as I have my computer.
True. I mean, do you find that that is limiting? Like that having to come on stream restricts your ability to really go out and explore and see the world in the same way?
Not really. I think just because of where I've come from, I'm similar to you in that I had never really had the money to travel or anything before getting into streaming. So I think that probably streaming and doing this has unlocked the ability for me to go to a lot more places. Like I've traveled around a ton. I'm just not I'm not much of I don't get much out of traveling. It sounds really bad. I've seen like some really amazing things and scenes in my lifetime. But I don't care that much. It's just not something that is that interesting to me. Yeah, I'm really into like music. I like arguing about politics and philosophy. I like playing video games. Like these are like the big things that are like my huge interests. So stuff involving that is really cool. But just seeing cool scenes, I just don't really care as much about. It's not like a huge thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, what I've found from talking to you so far is that you can put things into, you can take big concepts and put them into more succinct terms. And that's something I miss about debating, is that there are all these terms for certain concepts. Everything, like the language used is so much more efficient, and I miss it because it helped me to learn about things and also explore concepts so much faster. Um, I kind of let go of debating years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and that's, I think, one of the things that I really miss about it. But I also really have a wanderlust. Like I want to go and see the world because I kind of feel like on a universal scale, there's so much internet, and there is so much crap and stuff. People just buy stuff after stuff after stuff. It just doesn't make me happy. But there's only this tiny little speck of life that we know of in all of the known universe. Life is rare. Every little shape it comes in really intrigues me. I love insects, I love animals, I love, different environments and ecosystems and stuff. Always have.
Mm-hmm.
So I really want to go see it all. I want to see whales, and I want to see loads of different animals and forests and deserts and stuff. I do. I just don't think I can do it as a streamer.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it makes you feel any better, you're not missing out on any of that by not being involved in online debate, because online debate is just a bunch of people screaming at each other. So there's literally nothing there that you're missing.
Do you have like a favorite topic that you like to debate about?
There's tons of stuff that would be fun to debate about, but most debates usually come down to like somebody not knowing how to read a graph, or people just lying about like studies, or people just not like the big problem. I guess like the debates that I have are kind of a microcosm of the overall kind of like political reality of the world, and that nobody really agrees on like what is real anymore. So usually debates are just screaming at each other over like, did this happen? Like, is the deep state real? Did that person say that? Or is this fake media? Like usually that's like what every conversation is about. So there aren't very many fun conversations that like require a lot of brain power. Usually it's just a matter of like, can you read a news article, or do you know like what this means? Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it goes. Is there like a particular place that you really want to go? Do you have like a huge like I always want to like visit like the Caribbean, or I don't know, or I don't know where British people go to.
Well, British tourists have a really bad reputation for like pissing in public, having public sex, getting way too drunk, causing chaos. Like they're horrible tourists. They tend to go to places like Magaluf, and they like get blindingly drunk and just do just the most ridiculously debauched stuff you can think of. And so, unfortunately, the UK is just not very well liked. Most people don't want UK tourists.
Oh well, damn. Okay.
Yeah, but I want to go to this rat temple in India because I really like rats. So,
Wait, rat temple or rap temple?
rat temple.
Rat temple. Okay, gotcha.
Uh-huh. So breakfast, they think that the rats there are the dead reincarnated ancestors of the town, and that some of the particularly blessed souls become albino rats. And so people bring offerings to the temple to feed the people that they think are like grandma and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
that have come back in rat form. So you can sit there and they'll just crawl all over you, and you can be rat swarmed. And I really would love to do that.
Interesting. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned you have a lot of animals. What animals do you have so far?
Well, at the moment, I have the least amount of animals I've ever had. So I have a few rabbits, a giant African land snail, a few mice, and that's it at the moment because I'm narrowing down my time and saving up for things like incubators and stuff for the next baby bird season, because I take in a lot of wild animals and things, and it's been really hard to do that on stream. Like when you have to feed a baby pigeon like every couple of hours or so, it means
Mm-hmm.
that I've had to like whip him out and have him tucked under my arm and like syringe feed him whilst I'm talking to chat about philosophy or whatever. And it's a bit of a multitasking nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, now I'm just getting kit ready to make it much easier next year. I've rescued a lot of seagulls and birds and things, but I particularly like helping foxes and badgers and some of the larger wildlife. But I mainly do pet animals and either rehome them or look after them and keep them. I think the most animals I've had at once is 200.
Jeez. Wait, like
Yeah, I
what?
was heavily in
Yeah.
debt.
Gotcha.
um, but yeah, I had chinchillas, rabbits, rats, mice, a few cats. What else? There was more. Uh, What else do we have? I can't remember anymore. Oh, fuck ton of blackbirds at some point. Some pigeons. I looked after some parrots for a while. And also, I've lived at a sanctuary for a few months where I was looking after pigs, sheep, geese, ducks, um, also parrots, and donkeys and ponies and that sort of thing.
Damn, where do you find the space for all these things?
So when I worked at the sanctuary, I just went and stayed there. There was an army cot and a place to dump a sleeping bag and some toiletries. And that was where I stayed. At home, it was just bedrooms. Just give my bedrooms to my animals. So
Gotcha. Well, damn.
yeah, I think in depending on where you live, it's cheaper to rent places here.
That can be true in the U.S. as well. Yeah, just depends. Yeah.
Yeah, so I could afford the space to find some. So I can afford the space to look after animals because it's a little bit cheaper if you live in a dead town.
Do you have any dietary things? Are you like vegan or vegetarian or anything? Or?
Yeah, I'm vegan. I've been vegan for 16 years.
Gotcha.
I was raised vegetarian before that.
You said you live like in a smaller-ish town now. Is it hard to find like food sources for your diet? Or is...
No. So I have been in and out of homelessness, and I've been incredibly poor and had very little money. So that can be far more limiting on your dietary options than location, for sure. But what people fail to realize is that rice, beans, lentils, and vegetables are incredibly cheap. Like I was living off £20 for 2 people for 2 weeks. That I would go for a £20 food shop every 2 weeks to feed me and my boyfriend. That worked out with us having 3 meals a day that were really good, and snacks and treats. So it's very cheap and easy if you're building things from scratch to make food that's good for you, and very, very cheap. My meals were like 20, 30p each. So I never really struggled in that sense. I don't care where I live. There's going to be those basic cheap foods available, potatoes and things like that. So it's just a matter of knowing how to cook. Another limitation is that it's dangerous for me to be cooking for more than 20 minutes at a time because I will burn myself and hurt myself with knives and things if I hold them too long. So it's about making recipes that are very quick and easy, and that's more limiting than being vegan, to be honest.
Gotcha. Do you get any kind of... Oh, sorry, go on.
No,
you still manage?
I still manage, yeah.
Do you get any kind of like state aid? Like, is there any kind of disability or anything paid out if you have Tourette's, since you have like a medical diagnosis, or?
So for most of my life, I didn't have a diagnosis, so I couldn't access that. I was in a tricky situation. So what happened with me is there is government assistance. You get disability checks if you have a determined disability. But I could tell you some really fucking fucked up things about our system here if you're curious.
Yeah, go for it.
So, okay, my mum was not diagnosed for many, many years. She had a tumour growing in her womb that got so big because it wasn't diagnosed that to remove it would mean removing so many organs now that it's better just to leave it where it is, even though that has absolutely debilitating consequences. She also has a few other really chronic illnesses, which means she's bedridden for about 2 weeks out of every month, confused all the time. She passes out a lot, has absences, and is just generally not able to work at all, and that won't ever get better. And the thing with this is, she should be receiving disability money, which would be enough to live on, and it would pay for her rent, and that's normal. However, because the doctors kept going, because chronic pain is underdiagnosed in women, if women report chronic pain, it can still take 5 to 10 years on average to get diagnosed, especially with women-specific diseases like yeah, so basically it was very difficult to get a diagnosis. She did it in the end, but too late. And this meant that the whole time she was being put on job seekers allowance instead of disability. Job seekers allowance is when they pressure you to get work. They require you to be looking for work, show evidence that you're looking for work, show what jobs you've applied for, and only if you've been looking for work do they pay you. If you look like you're being lazy and not trying, they cut it off and they sanction you for certain behaviors. So she was put in that circumstance, forced to look for work whilst reporting all these symptoms and barely being able to come into the job centre. The job centre, the person she was assigned to help her find a job was a man who we listened to talking to the security guard at the job centre, saying specifically that he had threatened a woman with sanctions unless she applied for escort jobs, which is basically a euphemism here for prostitution quite often. And that he had a go on her, and she had nice tits, and was recommending to the bodyguard guy, the guard at the place, that he should give her a go as well. And so we were basically hearing an admission from him that he was coercing some of his clients to go into jobs for his own benefit in quite a creepy and disgusting way. They also did this to my mom. They tried to pressure her to be an escort at one point, and she just was like, fuck this, and left.
Sure.
And so, they can be very dodgy and take advantage of you. There are a lot of horror stories. They constantly, when she finally did start getting a disability allowance, they kept constantly reassessing her and saying, are you better yet? Can you work yet? Are you better yet? And if they think that, if you can hold your arms above your head for 3 seconds, if you can stand for 5 seconds, this sort of thing, then technically you're considered fit for work, which means they'll cut your disability. And many people who have terminal cancer, people who have literally no limbs, have had their disability checks sanctioned or stopped because they've been deemed to work out of the blue unexpectedly by one of these random tests, and they've died or ended up homeless and then died. And it's a big scandal. It's constantly happening in the UK. It's horrible. So being on benefits here is really, really bad, and people have a bad view of people on benefits. So if you're claiming this money, people think you're lazy, you're scamming the government, you're working off, leeching off taxpayers. So you are ostracized by society, making it harder to work, and the people who are meant to be giving you the money are constantly putting you in perilous situations and kind of like, just, it's a horrible, vulnerable place to be in. And this meant that we were in and out of homelessness because the money was not consistent. And, because it was really difficult to rely on them, I spent my childhood, there was a time where I went 2 weeks without food, literally. There was times where we had £5 between us to buy food for the month, things like this. It was really a struggle when I was growing up. It's a horrible position to be in. And my mom, she had to really fight tooth and nail to get that. And as for me, I tried to go to university because I didn't want to be on benefits my whole life. I didn't have diagnosed Tourette's, but I did have clinical depression for 13 years and severe social phobia, agoraphobia. And so I used to put that on a note, and that would allow me £5,000 a year to live on. So I was living on £5,000 a year from the age of, I think, 22 or 23. But before that, I couldn't claim it because I was going to uni.
Jeez.
So yeah, I didn't have very much money at uni, and I went from 9.5 stone to 6.5 stone because they were delayed in giving me my student loan. So I just couldn't afford anything to eat for like the first year.
Damn.
Yeah.
Do you take medication now for your Tourette's or to manage any of your symptoms or anything? Yeah, that's a pretty personal question. Obviously, you don't have to answer.
That's fine. There's not really anything off limits for me either. But I don't take Tourette's medication. The side effects are not worth it from my perspective, and also a lot of people who take the Tourette's medication feel drugged, kind of feel dopey and not themselves, and tired all the time, and it's hard to engage with the world. And I kind of feel like if I have a choice between being less than an average person in terms of how much I can engage and connect with people and think clearly, or about an average person just with different advantages to most, I'd rather go with the latter. So for me, I feel like people with Tourette syndrome have lots of strengths. They're just rare strengths. They have lots of weaknesses where most people are capable. So I don't feel like I'm at a disadvantage enough to try and fix it. I don't feel broken. I just feel like the world isn't used to players with my stats. If you see it as like a stat tree, I've got max level on that certain things that most people don't, but I also have no points on things that most people need. Yeah. That's where I'm at. And I'd rather be that than just drugged up and low stats all round.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty typical view that a lot of neuroatypical people prefer, is rather than viewing the atypicalness as like a disability or a pathology, it's more just that like, well, in some things you're better and in some things you're worse, and society's kind of geared towards the things that you're worse at the moment. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong or broken or messed up about the mind of a neuroatypical person, just that they're not necessarily suited for the society that we build around neurotypical people today.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree, but I think there's an evolutionary advantage to having non-neurotypical people. I think there's an evolutionary advantage to having autistic people, for example, in the community. I think that having lots of different minds that are very, very, very highly attuned for specific tasks, coming at all the problems that we face makes us a more adaptable species. So, like, if one group of people in the tribe remembers where all the fruit-bearing trees are for the year, that's useful. Whereas if another can't remember anything for shit, but can come up with creative ways to reach those trees if there's a flood or whatever, then they're useful. And so it's about having diverse minds to compensate and come at challenges, because we are a species that it's really squishy and pathetic and easily smushed, but we get by because we adapt our environment and we adapt ourselves to our new environments. We make clothes and shit like that. I don't think it would be possible for us to survive this long if we all had exactly the same carbon copy brain.
Sure. Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, that they're byproduct of like the differences in our brains produces like different types of people. It's not necessarily a bad thing, for sure.
Yeah. So I'm kind of, I don't want to speak for other people with disabilities. I'm sure there are people who think, I'd rather not be like this, and it is a disadvantage and disability, and I am less able. But that's not the attitude I have towards myself and others who aren't neurotypical.
Yeah. Damn. How many times when you're talking to somebody do you have to spell your entire life story? Because people ask you so many questions about about your history and everything.
It's like the 70% of my average conversations is answering the same questions over and over again.
Nice. Oh, well, actually, then you're basically getting the debate experience, so that's basically all I'm looking
Have you ever debated anyone about veganism? I know that a lot of people
we don't talk about that here, okay?
Yeah, it's fine. Like, don't worry. I know, like, nobody respects vegans. I'm so used to people getting really enraged if you're anything, if you're any religion or anything like that. The minute you're a vegan, people can spit in your food, shit on your life, hate you forever, and feel fine about it. So I don't care about your stance on veganism.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I personally, I'm not a vegan, and I think that I have the philosophical backing for it. However, I think that most people should be vegan. And I think I'm kind of known for a lot of vegan debates on my stream, because I usually argue in favor of veganism against people that get really, really, really mad every time there's some stupid fucking animal in the news that gets killed. And that's usually the thing that will trigger me the most. I don't know if you remember like Cecil the lion, or there was that ape or that gorilla that got shot or whatever. And it's always really funny to me that like meat eaters will go onto Reddit and they'll get so upset or so mad when they hear about like a cat being abused or like a chicken being abused or like a lion getting killed, and then they'll like go and they'll order like chicken nuggets and cheeseburgers, and it's like, well, do you actually give a fuck, or do you just care about like the cute ones, or do you just care about the cute ones you can see? So I think the usually when veganism comes up on my stream, it's usually because we're making fun of like people that eat meat that get like incredibly offended or sad when some animals are killed, but seem to not care about other types of animals generally.
Yeah, I remember my friend was watching an advert for a charity that saves stray dogs, and it was like pulling that sad story of like the abandoned dog and stuff, and they were shaking their head eating their dinner like, oh god, that's terrible, I don't know how anyone could do that to an animal. I was like, you're eating a cow's ass? I totally get that stance. I'm very puzzled by it myself. I mean, I understand why. I very much understand why. But it's still very, I don't know, it's, even though I know why people do it, I'm always so incredulous.
Yeah. Well, and I don't care, honestly, and like, this is why I have a level of respect for people that are just like, that are very forthcoming with their beliefs. This is true of like bad political beliefs or social beliefs, or things like veganism or whatever. If somebody is just gonna outright be like, listen, I don't give a fuck about animals, period. Like, if dogs are dying on the street or whatever, I just don't care. Fuck it. I respect that person more than people that get, like, selectively outraged against the cute ones that they happen to come across in the news while turning a blind eye to everything else. Because it shows me that, like, they don't actually give a fuck about anything. It's just whatever's, like, the most convenient thing for them at the time. And that usually drives me more crazy than anything else.
So you like people who are very morally consistent and very cognizant of all of the implications of that.
Yes, yeah, the consistency is a really, really, really big one for me. And people that are honest and understand themselves as well is also, like, a really big thing for me. Like, I would rather have a frank conversation against, like, a Nazi who's, like, a race realist that thinks that black people are genetically inferior or whatever, than have a conversation with somebody that is, like, hiding behind it, or just uses a lot of weird euphemisms, or isn't completely forthcoming with how they feel, but they think that there's something wrong with blah blah. Like, I prefer people that are just, like, very upfront about what they believe and understand what they believe and don't, like, hide behind, like, yeah, like, dumb phrases or whatever. Even if I disagree with those people, like, I can at least respect the consistency.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading books right now. I like to read a lot of psychology books and ones about neuroscience and things. And I'm reading one right now about how we tend to have a vain brain that carefully selects information, forgets the stuff that challenges our present worldview, and remembers things or distorts their memory of things according to how much it's self-serving, and that this isn't always a conscious decision, and that it's such an automatic mechanism that we all struggle with on a daily basis, that even those who specifically study for years in regards to confirmation bias and this sort of thing are still falling prey to it unconsciously and have to catch themselves whenever they do it. And so I try to be more understanding of people and their inconsistencies, because it's a real battle to remain consistent. It's not just a flip on and off choice, and I don't think that excuses hypocrisy, but understanding it helps people to deal with it better. So I acknowledge that I'm probably very inconsistent to some degree, but I wrestle with those inconsistencies whenever I spot them and try to align them and redirect them towards something that feels right. For example, I have my philosophy is, if you can choose not to cause harm, that's the right choice, right? But that is in direct conflict with the fact that I have a giant African land snail, because she has mites, and if I don't clean those mites off her and wash them away, she will die. But there are more mites than there is African land snail. I only have one. So in order to keep her and take care of her, I have to kill thousands of mites. And that seems like hypocrisy. But the way that I rationalize it is that I took her on. I'm responsible for her welfare and well-being. I made a promise to her previous owner that I would keep her alive and do what it takes to do so. I'm now her guardian, and as such, I have to live up to those responsibilities regardless of my personal moral views. And so I do what it takes, even when it doesn't feel right. And that's how I've rationalized it, and I'm going to stick with that even if it doesn't sit well with me.
Sure. If you feel bad about it, I think most vegans usually start from the axiom of, like, the only life worth defending is, like, sentient life regardless, right? So you ignore things like insects or whatever. So I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world.
To me, insects, because I know enough, there's enough evidence scientifically to suggest that they have an emotional capacity. To me, they are sentient enough to be worth regarding. If I can choose not to kill an insect, I will. So for me, I feel like insect life has value. So for me, because, like, if they can feel stress, if they can feel trauma, then we've proven that fruit flies feel trauma, that they have memories, that they have unique personalities. To me, that's sentient enough for me to regard them as an individual. If they have a personality, they're a person to me. So for their life has value to them, that's enough to give it value, and for me to not want to harm them if I can choose not to.
Okay, well, in that case, wouldn't you have then a moral obligation to, like, destroy these types of creatures? If there are creatures that necessitate the harm of other life forms, so one fun thought experiment with vegans is talking about, like, cat genocides. If you have creatures that are obligated to consume like animal protein, is it immoral to keep these things alive? Would the more moral choice be to eliminate all animals that necessitate the destruction or murder of other beings, I guess, to sustain their life? or how do you deal with that conflict, I guess?
Well, cats would be a bad example for that because they are obligate carnivores, but the cat food we presently give them has artificial taurine in because we process cat food so much that it removes essential taurine, which allows them to get protein out of the food.
Yeah, I've seen
So
people go
what?
back and forth on whether the
Yeah.
vegan cat. I don't know 100% if that's true. It might be true. It wouldn't surprise me. But we can substitute cat out for any other type of creature that would like necessitate
Okay.
the destruction of any. Because I assume that if we could recreate everything in a lab, then theoretically all of that consumption would be ethical or moral, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So my perspective on that is that with the decree of like the moral stance on veganism is to cause the least harm possible wherever you have a choice. Now, the reason why it's wherever you have a choice instead of it just ending at least harm possible is because we consider self-preservation a justification for harm. So, for example, a lion can't go on a tofu diet and live, they'll die. So,
mhm,
they are forced by necessity to kill in order to survive. So, from that perspective, because they're only causing harm when they have to, they're technically vegan.
mhm.
So, I might go outside tomorrow and step on a snail by accident in order to go outside, get food, and all the rest of the things that I need in order to live. Um, I still regard myself as vegan because I have no choice but to risk causing harm, but I will choose actively not to and reduce it wherever possible. And so my idea of veganism, and it's quite a well accepted version of veganism that most live by, is that because these animals need to eat meat in order to survive, that they are causing harm when it's necessary and
Mhm.
not when it's unnecessary. Um,
Would it be
because I can
more
choose not.
moral to like slowly like eradicate the existence of these creatures over time? So slowly breed out or prevent from breeding, like castrate and neuter, like all animals that necessitate the destruction of other life forms?
Well, that kind of flies in the face of all ecosystems because most ecosystems rely on predation as part of their maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in order for all of the life that is killed by, say, a lion, it also facilitates all the life that comes after their death.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, wolves, everyone uses the Yellowstone wolves as an example of how their predation actually it creates further life and
Sure.
therefore it's essential harm. It's not a recreational thing that could be avoided and is therefore unnecessary. I don't
Sure.
think there's any logic or any lives would actually be saved. I think it would just cause death in another respect.
Mm-hmm.
Like you take away the Yellowstone wolves and yes, they kill a few animals in order to survive, but they facilitate like millions of lives essentially over the course of the entire existence of Yellowstone
Mm-hmm.
to exist by
Could
their role.
Sure. Okay. Tell me when you want to stop on this. Okay. Because we've done a lot of these vegan special stream. So my next question, there's two branching paths from here. So the first
Mm-hmm.
question would be is if there is an ecosystem that can be created that sustains life but necessitates suffering, is that ecosystem a moral one? So for instance, we could talk about how like, well, if we stopped consuming cow meat, that would mean that less
Mm-hmm.
cows would be produced and eventually all cows would probably cease to exist because they wouldn't survive naturally in their current form in the wilderness. So if
Mm-hmm.
that's an example of an ecosystem that only exists and is self-sustained because of the suffering needed for us to consume the meat of the cows, is that like a moral ecosystem or should that be gone? And then the other branching path is like, is there any moral value at all in defending any ecosystem that necessitates the suffering of other sentient life? And if that's true, what puts like the moral value of sustaining an ecosystem above the moral value of just sustaining like hedonistic human happiness for consuming meat, right? So one person might say, well, we need some animals to die because it sustains the ecosystem, and someone else like, oh, sure, I agree. We also need some animals to die because it makes me really happy and I like to eat meat. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. We can stop this anytime you want. Okay. These are really
That's
like.
fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you're not gonna alienate me or upset me by having this discussion. I feel
Gotcha.
totally chill about it,
Okay.
and I don't
Well,
take it
that's because I
personally
haven't
at all.
started screaming at you yet. So. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
So, from my perspective, um, so I feel like with the cows example specifically, my answer would be in order for a cow to exist, we need to burn down a fuck ton of rainforest and destroy a fuck ton of ecosystems. Most of the natural ecosystems and habitats in this country are lost to animal agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't have cows, many more lives would get to exist. But we would still have cows if we didn't eat them because people keep them as pets. And also, they are selectively bred from a species of wild cow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So there would be wild cows that would continue to exist and live their lives regardless of whether or not people eat them. We don't need to eat them in order for them to exist. We're not doing them a favor um, by harvesting them the way that we do.
Mm-hmm.
So from my perspective, hedonistic happiness and its value doesn't have a higher value than the amount of happiness achieved by allowing millions of lives to exist. So, for example, if we stop selectively, because we breed cows, they don't breed themselves. We buy sperm, we artificially inseminate them. It's much cheaper to keep sperm on hand than it is a whole ass bull who doesn't produce anything that is equal to the value of food we give it.
Mm-hmm.
So we artificially inseminate them. They would not overbreed without our consumption. They don't need us to maintain their numbers. We are literally artificially creating their numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So we are creating them for hedonistic pleasure, which is fleeting. These are moments. So a cow lives their entire life, dies in a slaughterhouse for 3 minutes on your plate.
Mm-hmm.
If we take away that entire system and replace it with an ecosystem, yes, there is predation in that ecosystem. Yes, there is suffering in that ecosystem. But every single one of those lives, from the predators to the prey to the insects, all get to enjoy multiple moments several times throughout their lifetime, every day
Mm-hmm.
for years. And that equates to way more happiness achieved than the hedonistic 3 minutes on a human's plate for the millions of lives that don't get to exist in a cow's place, because one cow represents the loss of a fuck ton of lives and habitat, as well as the loss of the cow's life itself.
Could you
The
make an
space
argument?
required.
Yeah, I and kind of like in that vein, could you make an argument then that like almost all ecosystems are immoral, or because all of them necessitate the massive destruction of sentient life, or would almost all ecosystems become moral because they create opportunities for sentience to flourish or experience like well-being, I guess?
I think it would be way too reductive
Mm-hmm.
to say that it was only one or the other. I'd say that the thing with ecosystems existing is that they facilitate life,
Mm-hmm.
they facilitate sentience, and they facilitate advancement. And with advancement comes the possibility of life on other planets. I think ultimately, every single ecosystem is an opportunity for sentient life to happen and then spread to other planets.
Mm-hmm.
And this means that all equates to something incredibly important, which is for the opportunity of matter to experience itself, which is the rarest and most important thing I can know of in the universe. I don't know of anything else that is more important, because it's the opportunity for the universe to have sentience, know itself, experience itself, that sort of thing. I don't necessarily know that animal agriculture can ever facilitate the development of sentient life, because specifically we specifically breed domesticated animals to be stupid. We specifically make them stupid, obedient, and we reduce the amount of fight or flight response in them, so they have less self-preservation. And a lot of what causes us to go into space and advance and develop is our sense of self-preservation, which is what we rob domesticated animals of. And so I don't think that they can be compared, because one is a loop that always leads to the same outcome, which is a death.
Mm-hmm.
The other is, we don't exist purely to die. Neither do lots of free animals in their own ecosystems. They take part and participate in the furtherment of all the organisms in that ecosystem. And so natural ecosystems do not exist purely for someone to die. They exist so that everyone can participate. And there is freedom to branch out of that participation into other motives and discoveries. And I think that is completely incomparable. You can't call that anything like animal agriculture. Animal agriculture is not an ecosystem. It has suffering, but it also has no other outcome than that suffering.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. How often do you find yourself debating veganism on your stream? Do people argue about it a lot?
I don't let them argue about it with me. I'm not vegan to convince anyone that they should or shouldn't do anything. So people can ask me questions about the way that I live my life, but if they try to argue with me, I'm like, I'm not going to justify my sandwich to you, dude. I'm just going to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're curious about the way I live because you're curious about me, that's fine. If you're trying to bait me into an argument to justify yourself, I don't care. You don't need to justify yourself to me. Eat what you want, live how you want. I'm just doing what I feel is right. I'm contributing to the world in the way that I want to do. So like I take that stance quite heavily. But before that, I used to never tell. I kept it secret for nearly 2 years that I was vegan because I just didn't want to have to justify myself. A lot of people take it as a personal affront if anyone exists in a way that they don't. And I just didn't want people to take it personally. I just wanted to eat my food in peace. But yeah, I've grown very used to people challenging the way that I live, as if me just not wanting to eat a specific kind of food is a problem. Like if I said I don't drink wine, no one's gonna have a problem. If I say I don't smoke, no one's gonna have a problem. But suddenly everyone becomes a health expert and starts lecturing me on morals and stuff the minute I say I don't want to eat the same food, like the same meat or the same sandwich.
Sure.
And I find that like such an overreaction, and it's exhausting. So outside of like actual debates where I've stepped into an environment specifically to debate about it, and then I only do that to learn. Like people test my knowledge about my world and my diet, and that helps me to be a better person. I don't do it to convince anyone of anything.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. People probably find since veganism is generally, not always, but generally it's argued from an ethical or moral perspective. They're probably offended or upset that somebody perceives themselves as being morally superior for some lifestyle choice, so then they have to take it upon themselves to tell you why you're wrong, or they would have to accept that they're like ethically inferior in some way. I imagine it's like the driving reason why most people will fight to death with vegans if they hear them bring up their veganism.
Yeah. But I also find that a lot of people think that if you live differently, they have a sense of guilt, and they want to alleviate that guilt by proving you wrong.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
are an
Yeah.
opportunity, to redeem themselves in their own eyes. And I just don't want to be a device for that. They can go Google some shit if they want to do that. Like they can find a study that, they can blow themselves with some like very reassuring study on the internet. They can selectively cherry pick whatever they want from the internet and justify themselves. They don't need to ruin my day or my dinner. They don't need to argue with me, because like people would do it at dinner. Like I'd go to eat a Christmas dinner with someone and they'd try to bait me into an argument, and I'd be like, just let me eat my food, you weirdo.
Yeah.
So I'm very used to that reaction and dealing with it and using people's own momentum to scupper them. So when people get all uppity about my diet, they quite often consider themselves, it's usually dudes, and they usually feel like they're macho and they need their meat and they're a caveman and they're practically a lion. Look at my canines bullshit. So what I used to usually go is like, well then why are you being so weak and sensitive? Like why are you being so snowflakey about my food? Like why does my food offend you? And then they're like, oh yeah, shit. I'm like, yeah, why are you overreacting? Like why are you being a drama queen? And they're like, oh yeah, and they just leave me alone. So I've gotten used to just shutting down things as fast as possible because I have lived my whole life rather exhaustively trying to justify eating greens, and that seems like such a weird thing to have to do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
But I don't know if you end up resorting to that when you just can't be asked. Like, you must come across the same things over and over again. Do you ever just, like, find these default arguments that usually shut people up as fast as possible because you just can't be asked today?
Yeah, I guess my atypicalness is I really like arguing with people. I'll argue with anybody over anything ever. It's just, I don't know why, it's just very enjoyable for me. So if somebody wants to challenge me on something, it's usually like pretty fun for me. And then I've usually thought about the arguments like a lot as well. So usually they're stepping into an argument that they're probably not going to fare very well in. And then, yeah, I don't know, that whole experience is just like really fun for me. So I don't mind arguing a lot, but I can understand like why for a lot of people it would be frustrating to do it over and over again. And I guess I do it as a job and for recreation too. So I like have a different, I guess, perspective on it as well. But yeah.
Do you think that that's like almost like a troll perspective, like enjoying people's reaction and enjoying people not realizing that they're biting off more they can chew with you, and kind of like the competing to kind of have the winning position and that sort of thing? Is that an aspect of it, or do you like, is it the emotional reaction? Is it the knowledge? Is it what is it specifically that you like debating?
Well, for actual debating, I think it's really fun to like, I guess when I grew up in high school, I went to a religious school my whole life, and I was incredibly religious my whole life. So I went to a Catholic grade school, I went to a Jesuit high school, like an all-boys high school, and around the time when I was like 15, 16, I kind of started to lose my religious beliefs. And one of the ways that I found for kind of ensuring the validity of an idea I had was that if I felt like if I could argue an idea with anybody and like emerge victorious in the argument, then it must mean my idea is like pretty good. So I kind of got used to at an early age, kind of like testing ideas. Like, oh, well, you know, this guy believes this and I believe that. Like, okay, well, if I argue with enough people about this and nobody can prove me wrong, like I must be correct on this particular idea. I don't see how I can be wrong. So that's kind of where that, I guess, habit or attitude came from. And so, yeah, so when it comes to like, if you ask me like, oh, like, why do you enjoy like arguing with people? I think that like from the intellectual side of things, it's because it's fun to like test ideas in that way. Like early on when I was streaming, like if I got into an argument with somebody and then I went to like their subreddit or I went to some forum afterwards and everybody's calling me like a loser, cuck, short, midget, blah, 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 then I felt good because it meant that I won the argument because nobody was saying anything substantive. And that kind of stuff like felt good. Now that's like from the like, oh, like this is my intellectual approach to debates. Now on the other end of things, like I grew up on the internet, like trolling people, making fun of people. Like this is just what we were, horrible people in the early days of the internet. It was a very disgusting, very horrible place, and I loved it and I thrived in it, and it was just like a guilty pleasure of mine. Because my debates are completely worthless endeavors when it comes to like intellectuality or like actual substantive debate, and they're all just like screaming matches with like people waving their dick around. The typical enjoyment I get is that like, yeah, like if it feels like somebody's just being like completely stupid on something, and I know they're gonna get really frustrated, and I know that they're like completely out of their league, like yeah, there's definitely like some level of personal satisfaction for that for sure. I've been trying to find ways to have like more real world impact on like political things because I think that it's important to, if you can affect your environment, to like do that. And I went down to there's a state in the US called Georgia, and there's a city in that state called Columbus. And while I was down there, through like just completely and totally random chance, an unbelievable random thing, this lady walked up to me and my friend that were canvassing, and she like whips out her cell phone and she's like, "Excuse me, young man, like where are you from? Blah 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 blah." It's like, oh, okay, well hold on.
I saw it. I saw
yeah,
the video.
and I couldn't believe it was like the luckiest moment of my life where this lady just whips her phone out and wants to have a debate with me about it. I was like,
she was pivoting so hard, it was so infuriating. I was like, Jesus, isn't that an admission that she's wrong if she pivots so hard?
Yeah, but she didn't know it because I just look like some random dumb, like no, like the way that I dress, my hair and everything, I don't look like I am very well informed on anything. She probably just assumed I was some dumb college kid, or not even like just some dumb like dropout that was just there to like knock on doors or whatever. So that was pretty funny that to see somebody get like that caught off guard for that. So yeah, I mean like there's definitely like there must be some level of enjoyment if I'm able to do it so often, right? Like it's not all just like. Yeah, it's not all just like an academic thing. If I can do this for hours at a time every day, like yeah, it's obviously entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I left debating is partly because after I developed my stance on things, I found myself ending up having the same conversations over and over again with no new stuff.
Yep.
It starts to become like a bingo game. I mean, what I used to end up doing after ages of just like, oh, I was learning and I was a bright, fresh new person and I learned so much and people introduced me to so many cool studies and stances. I developed more of myself through debating throughout my teens. But then I just used it as a drinking game where I'd make a little stamp card with all of the common retorts, and then every single time that somebody did this particular argument or that, I'd take a shot and I'd still end up wasted as fuck winning the arguments, and I was like, this is boring now.
Yeah,
I didn't think I could do debating as a streaming thing, in part because it's already wearing on me to have this much vilification for having Tourette's. And all of the doubt and aggression that comes with that. But on top of that, I just don't feel like I would willingly take on as much abuse and as much of the worst behavior possible in humanity just to express an opinion. I mean, I feel justified in what I'm doing. I'm not hurting anyone. I don't feel like I have to explain myself. I don't really feel morally inclined to change other people. So I just left. I ended up leaving it because, I don't want to justify myself. So it lost its appeal after it got repetitive, after I stopped discovering new things.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And that's exactly what happens in all of my debates as well. Like there are so many times where like everybody on stream can identify as soon as somebody like activated a trap card, like you know that somebody's bringing something up and it's an argument that you've walked down 400 million times before and you know both ends of it better than they know like even their end. It happens all the time. It's just like usually the same repeated arguments over and over and over again. And it's like, oh, here we go. Like they brought up this one, now we're going to walk down this path again. And you know.
Can I ask you something, like, this is not really on topic, but, so, you're allowed to stream on YouTube now too, right?
Yep.
Is that because you're not partnered?
Correct. I no longer have the partner contract, yeah.
So does that mean you stream these streams on both platforms at the same time, or do you alternate?
Nope, I do simultaneously.
Oh, so we're on YouTube right now?
Yep.
Huh. That's cool.
Yeah, getting paid a lot of money from Twitch was cool too, but this is the compromise, yeah.
My condolences. Do you feel like that's ended up presenting opportunities in and of itself, though, because of shedding contracts and stuff, or do you feel like it's overwhelmingly been negative?
Everything in life is an opportunity in one way or another. You have to view things that way, or else you'll drive yourself crazy. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely tried to view it as an opportunity. Yeah, I mean, in some ways it's been an opportunity. I want to start try streaming, actually. I want to stream to Facebook as well. And then in other ways, yeah, it sucks, but yeah, I try to roll with the punches. So like streaming on YouTube has been really cool because during high drama events, I get like a lot more viewers from YouTube that otherwise wouldn't have known about me. And then I consistently carry like 1,000 to 3,000 viewers on YouTube as well, which is nice. It's just people that otherwise wouldn't have known. And yeah, so.
That's cool. I'm glad that, you know, it's had some perks at least. Yeah. Well, I should probably go, but is there anything else you wanted to ask me before I do go?
Fuck, can anybody think of any questions? I think we've covered a lot. I think we covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah. Well, thank you for, you know, being relatively.
Wait, being relatively what? Your mic cut out. All right. Well, I feel very relative. Steps. Not that kind of relative. Okay. Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed. Anime music video. Thank you, guys. That's just what I wanted to watch right now.